Evan, you're it's great to meet you first off, but thank you for joining the show. Are you in Vegas?
I am in Vegas right now. Yes, sir. I've been out here for roughly 5 months, something like that. From Missouri originally, but I moved here from Florida. Spent the last about 5 years or so in Florida, Deerfield Beach area, just north of Fort Lauderdale, and really loved it down there. Big change up from Missouri, but this too, Vegas is a big change up from even Florida. So it's been great, man.
Yeah, totally. And so I met you though when you were on the East Coast. We are at our boy JP's wedding a couple weeks ago. Was that your first time being in Greenville?
No, I had been in Greenville a couple times before. I met JP down in Florida.
Yep.
And then one of my best friends, Anthony Canzano, and Jeremy Pierce. They're both from Greenville, South Carolina area. So um, actually, I stayed with them while I was
Oh,
out there. So
cool.
it worked out great going to JP's wedding. I got to go see them, go to JP's wedding, get some training in. So
Nice.
but yeah, I had been up there to Greenville, I think maybe twice, maybe three times before that.
Nice.
But
Yeah, it's a good spot, man. Me and JP love Greenville. That's where, I mean, honestly, where we're both born and raised. And it was great meeting you. And he's been a great connection for me. And I had him on the show. And he was like, dude, you got to have Evan on. So I was like, all right, let's do it.
well,
So you
thank you
grew
so
up
much,
in,
man.
yeah, man, you grew up in Missouri. What was like for you, childhood? What were you doing? When did you start fighting? Like, what was Missouri like growing up?
Yeah, man. For me, Missouri growing up, dude, it's so funny because whenever I feel like maybe it's probably pretty similar for all of us, but like whenever I was growing up, I thought man, this is kind of boring. Like, it's got to be so much better stuff out there, like because it became my normal. It was just my normal, and but it was grew up kind of in the middle of the woods. Especially I was in a subdivision for the first probably 12 years of my life. And then around the time I turned 12, we ended up getting a cabin in the woods. And that's whenever things got real country. And we had a little bit of farm going on. We had a ton of chickens, a huge garden, a tiny bit of an orchard, a couple fruit trees, stuff like that. But that's when, truthfully, man, I tell you what, looking back now, those were like the good old days.
Sounds like a
It's
lot
funny
of
how you don't
fun, man.
realize,
Yep.
dude, it was so much fun, man. Whenever it would snow, we were pulling each other around on the sled and on the four wheeler. We were always freaking
You have
had
brothers and
huge
sisters or
bonfires and
first?
both. I got two younger sisters, and then had a shit ton of friends that came over to my house every day, dude. And I had a couple buddies that would ride home on the bus with me. We'd my stepdad is who my mom and my stepdad is who I was living with there, and my stepdad built me a gym in our garage because I ever since I was
Dang,
probably like 6 years
that's
old, I had
legit.
a yeah, dude, I had this dream of being in the UFC, so we used to watch the fights together, and that's kind of where the dream originated. I would we would be sitting there watching the fights, and I just loved it. I loved it, and he loved it, and we were like, imagine if that was you one day. And I was like, dude, for sure,
That is
that's
wild.
I felt like right away. I felt like God put that on my heart. Like, that's my calling. Like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be UFC world champion. And so, ever since then, ever since I was like 6 years old, that's been the dream. Had no idea what I was doing. Had nobody around me that knew what we were doing as far as fighting or trying to achieve anything great, truly. But fortunately, I got the best family in the world, man. I think that the most important thing is just having unconditional love, truly. And so my family didn't necessarily know how to guide me or get me,
6-year-old wants to be in the
to
UFC. Like, what are you doing?
yeah, yeah, so nobody had ever kind of pursued that path themselves, but they just supported me wholeheartedly the whole time, try to help me in every way they can. They're my biggest driving force, my biggest reason why. So
When you were 6, who were the guys you were watching on UFC at that point?
shoot, man. I mean, my earliest remembrance of the fights was Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner, pretty cliche, but I mean, it's just a freaking,
Yeah.
it's a classic. But I really do remember that being like, for me, I didn't understand how crucial, because I was so young, I didn't understand how crucial that point in the UFC's career,
Hmm.
how crucial that fight was. But I just remember how amazing it was, how captivated I was. And I was like, dude, if I could figure out, I think internally, I somehow thought, I didn't consciously know this, but I think intuitively, what was happening was like, I was like, dude, if I could somehow become the type of person that it would take in order to do something that great. Like, because I just thought it was the craziest thing in the world. I watched Stephen Bonner, Forrest Griffin just beat the brakes off of each other. I mean, it was
That's
crazy, but
crazy.
they left it all in the cage. And, but that was, I think that was around the time I remember just being like, feeling like God put that calling on my heart of like, dude, that's what I have to do. I have to be able to figure out how to be that tough. And
Hmm.
because the person that I will become along the way is what will make it all worth it. And like I said, I had no idea about that. It's not like I was having those thoughts at 6 years old, but I think intuitively somehow I knew that,
Sure.
like looking at that level of greatness of just, aspiring to do something so far beyond what I had probably ever thought I could even do, because even years into me training, it was still I'd always believed, like I'm training to be UFC world champion. I'm gonna be in the UFC. I'm gonna do all these things, but it's kind of like I hope so. I hope I can. Like, I don't know. But I know you can do anything you put your mind to because that's what everybody's always said. And so I had this hope, this faith of like, well, this is the way things are supposed to work out. If I give everything I have, it's supposed to work out that way. I'm supposed to be in the UFC.
Hmm.
But I didn't really believe it until really, until, a couple fights into the UFC, so and my whole life I'd, idolized these guys, kind of looked up to them like they were different level human beings. And they are for sure. It's like UFC fighters are a different breed. They're a little different than the average human.
Definitely.
But I thought they were just like aliens, you know. So then fortunately, finally I got to be around them all the time. I moved
Hmm.
down to Florida, started training at Killcliff FC, which was Hard Knocks at the time, and then it was Sanford MMA. Now it's Killcliff, one of the best gyms in the world. And I got to be around these unbelievably high level guys that I've idolized ever since I was young, and I got to see how human they are. Of just
Hmm.
like just average, just regular, just not average, just regular
Yeah.
people,
Nice
that just
guys.
had,
Like, yeah.
yeah, super nice, most of them super humble, very willing to help. And yeah, I have this weird memory for some reason. One of the first days I had down there at Hard Knocks, because whenever I showed up there, dude, the same way, like I said, I've been like idolizing these guys. I was like, here's my chance to get on the mats with all these guys. Dude, I was so starstruck and I was so nervous and like, um, but I remember after training, dude, everybody was a savage. Everybody there was just elite level savage. We had
Mhm.
an insane hard training session. And I remember some of the guys talking about like going to get tacos and beers after practice. And I was like, what? Like, you guys do that? Like, I feel like that's like such a regular person thing. And it started, as time went on and went on, I just seen like, bro, everybody's just people.
Mhm.
Everybody. And it doesn't matter who. Everybody's just people. It's just these guys fell in love with being savages and took
They're
their
really good at
ordinary
it.
skill set, their ordinary human gifts, to extraordinary levels. And but we're all people, man. We're all just the
Yeah.
same.
No, that's a great point. And I think growing up as a kid, you see, any sports individual or anybody you look up to. Like I always looked up to sports players, athletes. And at that point, you do like you look up to them like they're yeah, like you said, like an alien. And then when you get older,
Mm,
like you realize like, man, they got families, they got kids, they like, it's just like they're real people in a sense where they do everyday things like me and you, but they just have some incredible skill that they have been blessed with, and they're taking it to the highest level. And but outside of that, a lot of them are very humble and easygoing. And like you said, I love guys that like are willing to help others and things like that.
mm.
With uh, with you back to you being 6 years old and this dream pops into your head, how'd you get into fighting? Were my guess would be maybe like the wrestling team or something, probably at that age. But like, what was your journey, through your first kind of training sessions and getting into fighting?
Yeah, man. I don't really I think a lot about how I wish I could have, done things different. I'm sure all of us do. No real regrets. It's not like, oh my gosh, this was so detrimental. I wish I would have done this different. But, just looking back, I'm like, man, how could I have been better or whatever? Um, which doesn't serve too much of a purpose. I think it's good to learn to know for the future, but you can't alter the past. It's not like no matter how much thinking or dwelling you do on the past, it's not going to change it. So,
Sure.
no point in getting too caught up in it. But anyways, the reason I say that is just because I feel like God's plan is so perfect, man. And I would be so afraid, even though I feel like, man, I would have tried to, I think I should have changed different things. I wish my parents would have got me into this sooner, or like, whatever. But at the same time, I'm scared to even think that way now, because I'm like, I don't even know where, because how much would that alter the entire trajectory of
Hmm.
everything that I've had happen, which I think has made me exactly who I am. And truthfully, as cliche as it may be, it's like I'm so happy with the experiences I've had, and the people I've met, and who it's made me. So I wouldn't want to change that for nothing. But um, anyways, with all that being said, I started, I had this dream ever since I was like 6, but not until I was about, I guess 13 is, I think, when I started wrestling. I think my seventh grade year is, so my stepdad, being a slightly knowledgeable MMA fan, he kind of realized that like these wrestler guys are tough as hell. Like, that's what you should probably start in. And,
Yep.
he doesn't have any martial arts experience, but he was just a huge fan. So, just listen to the commentators and, adding his own 2 cents and stuff. So, um, anyways, he was like, let's wait till you wrestle. Once you wrestle a couple years, then we'll find you an MMA gym. So my seventh grade year was the first year at the time my school was offering wrestling. So I
Mm.
wrestled my seventh and eighth grade year. And then after that, they actually started a 6-year-old program for 6 years old and up. So
Dang, that
I
would have
just
been
missed
you.
that. I know. But like I said, dude, I wouldn't change
Doesn't
it for
matter.
nothing,
Yeah,
because
totally.
yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It had to be exactly how it is. As crazy as it
That's
is,
how I
dude.
feel at times, man. Like I used to think, but then, I got friends and family members have helped me realize like things happen for a reason. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't be who you are now if things were different back then. And I appreciate the person I am now. So like I'm good with
Yep.
how things went previously.
Yeah. Yeah, man. As goofy as it may be, that whole butterfly effect thing, it's like you kill a butterfly in the past, you don't even know how much, something so insignificant seeming, may alter, the whole entire future in some
Yeah.
drastic way. But, to me, that just speaks greatly to, um, the complexity of the world and God's plan specifically, of
Hmm.
like, dude, his ways are so far above our ways, man. And anyways, so I wrestled my seventh and eighth grade year. It did fairly well, not great. I was just really tough more than anything. People would beat the snot out of me, and then I'd end up pinning them in the third just because they got exhausted from beating me the whole time. And funny enough, actually at a wrestling tournament for that reason, I was just like just super scrappy, wasn't very good. The first MMA practice I ever had was at a gym called 21st Century Self Defense, or yeah, I think that's what it was, 21st Century Self Defense, with Coach Benny Voiles, back home in Missouri. But uh, how it actually came to be was my dad was on the edge of the mat, um, cheering me on at a wrestling tournament, right? And this coach had a son my age that was always, they were always at the same wrestling tournaments.
Got it.
And he realized my dad cheering for me. He walked over to him and was like, he's like, hey, is that your son? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I'll be honest with you, that kid don't really know what he's doing, but man, he's tough. And
Nice.
he's like, has he ever thought about doing MMA? And he's like, actually, yeah, that's the whole reason he wanted to wrestle in the first place. And he was like, dude, you should bring him down by the gym. You should bring him by the gym. So went in that weekend, had the hardest practice of my whole entire life, and was just addicted ever since then. So after I had that practice, that gym was about an hour away from me, so it was a little too far. So my dad had to uh, my parents had to take me to practice after they got home from work, every day, because I couldn't drive yet. So we had to find something a lot closer. So I ended up finding a little hole in the wall gym, pretty close to where I was, on MMA. And so where I got my roots, learned how to be extraordinarily tough. I'll be honest with you, and I don't even want it to sound like I'm saying anything bad, because man, I love the gym. I love everybody there, but we didn't really know what we were doing. The training wasn't super good. I didn't know it at the time because it's the first gym I ever trained at. So I
Yeah,
thought,
totally.
pretty much, and so I thought all training was pretty much the same. But the uh, the work ethic in that room was extraordinary, and that's
Nice.
like that's the
That's a
so
good core right
though
there.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great foundation. Unfortunately, I didn't have the best training to start off with to build, my foundation. But it taught me more core character values, more than
Mhm.
anything. So that itself was the best foundation. So ended up after my seventh and eighth grade year wrestling, found the MMA gym, started training. I wrestled my freshman year still, but then after that, I just focused on MMA. So I stopped wrestling after my freshman year, pretty much, and focused on MMA, and been doing that ever since.
Is there an amateur circuit for MMA?
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank goodness. And
Yep.
that's actually it's funny you say that because in some country, I know like a lot of Brazilians and stuff, they're like that they don't usually fight amateur; they just go pro. It's like, well, we're just fighting, might as well get paid for it. So for me, in my opinion, I'm really glad. I think amateur fighting, well, I think fighting MMA is different than all other combat sports
Mhm.
because you can compete in jiu-jitsu, boxing, wrestling. You can have great experience. All these things help a ton. It's just dealing with competition. There's a different level of intensity when it comes to competing, and you just can't really mimic it in the gym. No matter how hard you go with your training partners,
Mhm.
the atmosphere, the pressure, knowing this counts. You can't replicate those nerves and that
For
pressure you get
sure.
put on you. And so, anyways, you need the repetitions, that experience of the actual competition itself. So, doing that through wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, all these other things are great. It's all experience. But MMA itself, like an actual fight, I don't think you can replicate the nerves of a fight. Especially with like the ill intent of your
Yeah.
opponent. So, anyways, I think it's great to have an amateur MMA circuit because you just get used to, man, those first couple fights are really tough because especially if you don't have any real competition experience,
Hmm.
there's a lot of wrestlers that have extensive competition experience because they
Hmm.
wrestle, a
Like
lot of times.
college or like, yeah.
Yep. And then especially if you're going to like most guys, I would say, especially if you're wrestling at a high level, like if you're wrestling like D1, if you're wrestling Division 1,
Hmm.
chances are you probably been wrestling since you were 6 years old.
For
Like that's
sure.
usually when people start. And you wrestle during season every weekend. And you usually have a couple matches every time you
Hmm.
compete. So it's like, dude, you get so many reps of that competition feel. And so you get way more accustomed to dealing with those nerves, knowing what it's like to deal with the pressure. And then more than anything, you get the time to understand your mind in those situations because
Hmm.
that's all it is. It's all it is your ability to stay in control of your mind
Yeah.
in those high intensity situations.
Totally.
And
Build up the
but like I
strength
said,
in
it's
your
just kind of hard
mind.
to
Yeah.
replicate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
100%.
What was your first fight like?
So my first actual So my first MMA fight I had when I was 18. My first kickboxing match is what I kind of consider like my first fight. I had
Got it.
some, like I said, wrestling, um, jujitsu matches, stuff like that, before I was 15. But to me, when you're getting hit, when you're getting actually punched, kicked, kneed, elbowed, or whatever, it's a whole different feel. There's like a different level of anxiety of like
I bet.
everything's so tense and tight because you're not just trying to get, thrown on the ground or anything. Like somebody's trying to knock you out.
Yeah, hit you in the
And
face.
yeah. So um I think that I would consider, my first kickboxing match whenever I was 15, kind of like my first fight per se. So I had my first kickboxing match when I was 15, and it ended up going well. I fought some kid that was like 23 at the time. Um People thought it was kind of a little bit of a mixed match because I was kind of young and it was my first fight. Fought a kid that was quite a bit older than me, and had some grown man strength compared to me, and I ended up TKOing him in the second round and stuff, and
Nice.
um, so it went well. But dude, that experience, like, it was just a lot. I'll be honest with you, a lot of my amateur fights because I lacked that ability to stay in control of my mind. Fortunately, I was tough enough to know no matter what, I'm gonna go do this. Like I'm gonna go get it done. Whatever's asked of me, this is what I'm doing. But I wasn't in control of my mind in the sense of like staying calm, relaxed, being present. It was
Yeah.
just like So
Eyes wide open,
it
just
was
going
just
crazy.
it was just madness, so dude, that's actually it's so funny, man. Like we were saying earlier about the childhood stuff, of like the glory days. Man, it's funny how blissfully ignorant I was of everything, at the time. Just like just going out there wide-eyed and just ready to compete, so
Dang.
uh yeah, it's awesome, man. But yeah, been come a pretty far way since then.
Ha-
Mentally, physically, spiritually.
Yeah, man. I mean, what was the jump for you to go down to Deerfield, Florida and start training?
So whenever I was like 19, I had just turned 19. This was my third amateur MMA fight. So I couldn't fight MMA until I was 18. And my
Hmm.
third amateur MMA fight, uh, I ended up fighting a guy that went on to be in the UFC, but I lost to him. And it was my first loss as an amateur. And it was kind of the kick in the butt I needed in order to be like, hey, man, if you really want to do this like you say you do, you need to devote everything you have to
Hmm.
this, because it was that wake up call, like seeing I had a terrible weight cut. I cut weight really bad. Uh, Again, kind of the people around me, unfortunately, I didn't know that they didn't necessarily know what they were talking about,
Hmm.
because I didn't know myself. So I was just kind of trusting. And now that I know way more now, I'm like, oh, wow, we had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah,
And
the weight cutting
everybody
stuff
was
is
just,
crazy.
yeah, there's a real science to it, man. You got to be smart about it because it will deplete you so bad if you
Hmm.
don't. And that's what I was doing. I remember going to school, uh, I'd have like a handful of nuts that I would carry. I'd have like a bag, like I'd get like a handful of nuts, put it in a little Ziploc bag, and I was like, this is what I get to eat for the day. So like
Dang.
throughout class, like dude, ridiculous. Like, but I was like, well, nuts are good. And I think at the time too, the people I was training with and stuff, they were kind of on like this paleo kick,
Mhm.
which is great. I understand way more now, but I don't think they fully understood either. So they were just like, yeah, like fruits, nuts, stuff like that. So I was just like, okay, fruits and nuts. Well, I got nuts. I got some almonds and stuff at the house. I'll just eat that then. And so I just munched on some almonds throughout the day. And the other thing I remember, everybody at my lunch table hated me for it. When I'd have to start cutting weight, I'd get packs of tuna and then a
Oh, the
can of green
smells.
beans. I would literally just bring a pack of tuna and a can of green beans for lunch, and I would pour it out onto a little paper plate and eat the green beans out of the can. Um, just no idea what I was doing. So, anyways, get back on track here. Sorry, I'm the worst.
Oh, you're
It's so
good, man.
funny
I love
because
it. Keep on
I
going.
get thinking about something else, and I'm just like pulls me down a whole rabbit hole. Um, but
What took
Yeah,
you to
so I had a
Florida?
terrible
Yeah.
weight cut. Yeah, I had a terrible weight cut. Fought like crap. Got dominated all 3 rounds. And ended up going to decision. I lost. Like I said, one of the best things that ever happened to me because it was the realization, the kind of the wake up call that I needed to be like, hey man, you want to do this like you say you do? Let's do
Mhm.
it. Like for real. Like you need to go dedicate everything you've got to this. Because at the time I was so comfortable back home in Missouri. Uh, you know, being home with my family at my home gym that I started training at, everything was like, uh, I was very
You were
comfortable.
still in your
I
teens
knew,
almost at this point, right?
yeah, I just turned 19.
Yeah.
And so then I ended up being like, you know what? And super naive, had no idea about anything in life. I was always a very dumb kid because I didn't care about anything except for fighting, and so I didn't care about trying to learn about nothing. I was like, I just want to fight, and but I was exceptionally smart in the sense of my work ethic. I was,
I love it.
because
Yeah.
knowledge isn't power until knowledge is applied. I had the ability, I had a special ability to always be willing to apply. I just didn't have very much knowledge. But anyways, I was like, California is a big state. There's got to be good training out there. And so I was like, dude, I'm literally just gonna pack up my car and go live in my car, and I'll make it work. I'm gonna figure it out. Champions do it all the time. I just figured that's what you do. And by the grace of God, a couple weeks before I was moving out to California, some family friends of mine were living out there, and they heard I was wanting to move out there, so they hit me up and they're like, "Hey, we heard you want to move out to California." And I was like, "Yeah, you know." And they were like, "Our daughter just moved back home to Missouri. We got an empty room if you want to come stay with us." And I was like, "Dude, yeah, that'd be amazing. Where are you guys at?" And they're like, "Stockton, California. I don't know if there's any training out here." So immediately I thought of the Diaz brothers, and
Oh yeah.
I looked it up. Their house was only like 3 miles away from the Diaz Academy. So went out there. I trained out there for a year and a half, and then after that, I moved back home for like a year, and then I met somebody, my boy Dustin Scrappy Lampros.
I've heard of
Uh,
Scrappy,
I
yeah.
always, yeah, I always throw his nickname in there for some reason. It's everybody calls him Scrappy. So I met Dustin Lampros in Missouri, and he told me, he was like, "Man, you got to get down to Florida. That's like the best place in the world to train." So packed up my car, moved down there, lived on his couch for a couple of weeks, and that's how I got to Florida. So I guess at that time I was about 21 years old whenever I first moved to Florida, and spent about 5 years down there.
What's what's like the pay like when you're starting out? Like you said, like so many champions go and live out their car. Like, that's a story that I feel like I do hear and I read about the early careers of a lot of these guys. You know, trying to make ends meet, but also train and make a living. I'm with your mindset, you probably just didn't care. You're like, I'm I'm doing whatever it takes. But talk me through that and like what's the challenges of you trying to start a career in fighting?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, I'm so fortunate, so blessed to have had that mindset. Because that's just what I've always thought. I've just always thought, dude, you got to do whatever it takes. Of course, it's going to be hard. Of course, you're not going to want to do it. Of course, it's going to be uncomfortable. Of course, there's going to be better things that you think you could be doing. But if this is what you have to do, if this is what you want to do, you have to figure out what has to be done. And then
Hmm.
I've always just thought, by any means, you have to do what you have to do in order to get to what you actually want. So, anyways, to me, it didn't seem like I was just like, I just thought that was normal. Yeah, you got to do
Hmm.
whatever, if that means sleeping on the mats, like in the gym, or if that means sleeping in your car, whatever, that's what you have to do. So, but I see now a lot of people struggle with that. I didn't really
Yeah.
realize it, because, fortunately, I just had always, what I thought I answered the calling, that God placed on my heart. It's just like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to do it by
Yeah,
any
that's
means.
all you
So,
need, man. If you
but
have that mindset, it doesn't matter.
it really doesn't, man. Yeah, it really doesn't. But yeah, dude, getting started out is really tough because there's no money to be made.
Hmm.
Honestly, man, unless there's way smarter, it really takes a village. It really does.
Hmm.
It's in order to like do things really well at the beginning of your career, you kind of got to have people guiding you and leading you in the right direction, because it's almost
Hmm.
like there's just too much to know. And whenever you first start, for me, for example, maybe it's different for everybody, but for me, for example, I had my first pro fight, 2018, September, something like that, September 8th, maybe. And I got paid $300 to fight, $300 to win. So I got like
Dang.
$600, and that's pretty common. Like you're going to get paid a couple $100, win and show and win money. For your first couple fights,
Hmm.
not until actually, you know what? I was 7-0 as a pro, when I got called to the UFC, and that was the first time I made any like real money. And uh,
I was
the
about to
fight
say,
before that,
go ahead.
I was 6-0, right? Fighting for 7-0. My sixth pro fight, I got paid $1,500 flat, and I was like, bro, this is awesome. Like that was like the most money I had made yet.
Hmm.
And but what saves you usually from like a lower level, as a pro, is sponsors, like
Hmm.
sponsorships, like being able to sell spots on your shorts, making fight shirts. Having a fight banner, the banner that hang over the
Hmm.
cage as they're announcing you, stuff like that. So, usually make, for me, and that's where kind of branding yourself and selling yourself. To me, I just always thought about being a good person. I'm like, I've always thought be undeniable. Just work as hard as you possibly can, treat everybody well, and give nobody any reason to deny you. And then
Yeah.
things just kind of fall into place. So I had, a bunch of sponsors that would help me out. I usually make 2 or 3 grand off of sponsorships in a fight, and then a couple hundred from the fight. And then, a lot of times I'd sell shirts as like a fundraiser.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
I ended up, making probably 3 or 4 grand off of a pro fight. And, but that takes months of work.
Sure.
So
Yeah, that's like
it's
6 months sometimes of work to make a couple of grand.
yeah,
With
yeah.
when you're going into your seventh fight, do you have an idea that the UFC might come calling? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah, the my so whenever going into my seventh fight, um, I was uh I was thinking after this fight, I'm gonna be getting close to like being on the door of the UFC. So
Hmm.
like actually when the UFC called me, I was scheduled to have a title fight for a regional UFC Fight Pass organization, and which was a big deal for me at the time.
It
And
would have gotten you into the
so
UFC.
pretty much, yeah. A lot of times, if you win a belt on a UFC Fight Pass organization, it kind of
Hmm.
like guarantees you usually a short notice opportunity. It's not
Sure.
like you just get signed, but it's kind of like, hey, we need somebody to fill in this week. Here's your shot. You want to take it? And it's kind of like, here's a shitty opportunity, but do it, get your foot
It's
in the door,
crazy.
and that's how you get in.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I was getting ready for that title fight, regional title fight, and I was fighting a guy that had been in the UFC but got kicked out due to having a losing record in the UFC, and so I was supposed to be fighting this guy, and I remember I was kind of preparing my mindset for that, and I was telling myself when I win this fight, when I win this coming up fight, don't be surprised, don't get caught off guard when the UFC calls you. I don't want to be, I didn't want to be kind of like starstruck or like, oh my gosh, like, because, it adds way more nerves and everything. It's like, yo, start getting ready for this. This is what you've been preparing for. This is what's supposed to happen. Be ready for it. And sure enough, before that fight happened, I got the call and I wasn't ready for it.
Dang.
I was like, oh my gosh, this was supposed to be after this fight. And so it did, it caught me off guard.
They told you
Um,
before the seventh fight?
yeah, so they called me and said, like, hey, scratch your fight. Here's your opportunity to
Ah,
fight in the UFC right now on four
dang.
days notice. Do you want to take it? And I was like, yeah, let's do it, dude. Like, I got to take this opportunity. So I got my first UFC fight and on 4 days notice up a weight class, got the crap beat out of me. I was totally, everything I've been talking about this whole time, the whole mindset thing of like, uh, I let it get the best of me. I was like walked out. It was so different than every other organization I'd ever fought for. It's like it's really comical to see how different lower level organizations are compared to the UFC. I mean, the UFC is the UFC for a reason. I
Yeah,
mean,
for
they got,
sure.
everything's so professional, so official. Everything's on. I mean, you got a timesheet of like you're going to be here at this time doing this and then this. You walk when we tell you the lights, cameras, and then the pressure of being in front of dudes. I'm whenever I first got there, I was 24, maybe I was 25. Um, I guess I was 25 maybe, and I was just, I did a poor job preparing myself for the moment. I was just got totally starstruck. Everybody had always told me, like, hey, when you get there, don't be surprised. It's just like any other fight. And I was like, yeah, 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 for sure. And then totally let it slip through my fingers. And
Who were you fighting
uh,
then?
so my first UFC fight was Preston Parsons.
All right.
And yeah, so it was his second UFC fight.
In
He
2022.
had,
Yeah, see it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, man, it was a heck of an experience. And again, dude, got the crap beat out of me, and one of the best things that ever happened to me, dude. I learned so much. It's so funny, man. If we like truly, I'm pretty much a walking cliche because I feel like it's just everything in life is about your mindset, and these cliches they hold. There's a reason they're cliches because they're kind
No,
of
I like them.
worn
Yeah.
out. Yeah, they're worn out because everybody says them and the reason everybody says them is because there's a lot of weight, a lot of value in the words that are being
Hmm.
said. But man, it is crazy how much more valuable our losses can be than even all of our wins.
Sure.
So I learned so much more from my couple losses in my career than I have all of my wins combined.
Yeah. Because I mean that's like life, man. You learn, you know, life like hard times in life, you learn a lot more and you can be better from them in your personal life, just like, in a fighting career. Like you learn from your losses just as much as you learn from your wins, and a lot of times more in your losses than you do in your wins because you realize what you were doing wrong or what you could get do better.
100%, dude. Yeah, and I mean, truthfully, that's why, excuse me, truthfully, that's why I love fighting so much, man, is I think it's the most analogous thing to life
Hmm.
is life is a fight for all of us, dude. You know, it's like every single day when
True.
I don't care who you are, we wake up and just like I was saying earlier with the UFC fighters, I used to think they were like aliens, different people. It's like, man, everybody's got the same problems. We're all people, man. We are all human beings, and we have fundamental wants and needs and thoughts and problems we deal with. And it's like, do we all have a very similar life? Obviously just lived out in different, very different, many different ways, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, it doesn't matter who you are, man. We every single one of us fight every single day. Most of us aren't walking around physically getting in fist fights, hopefully. But
Yeah.
mentally and spiritually, we're fighting every minute of every day,
Yep.
trying to make the right
Totally.
decisions between usually making a decision between what we want now versus what we truly want, in the
Hmm.
future, because there's a dichotomy there of like, you think you want this cheat meal, you think you want this shitty food because it's what sounds good right now, but in your future you doesn't actually want that.
Yeah.
You want to be
Yes.
happy, you want to be healthy, you want to feel good, but you're willing to trade that right now for this momentary happiness, for this immediate gratification. But
Yeah,
that's
totally.
that's the fights I'm talking about, and it's like that spreads everywhere. That's
Hmm.
everything you do in life.
Yes, nonstop, man. Like you said, like those mental battles we're all fighting every day. With with your training routine and schedule, um, what's your like what do your mornings look like? How many times do you train per week, per day? Like how do you and this is I guess your next fight isn't announced, so maybe this is you're not gearing up for a fight right now, but like what is your normal training routine?
Yeah, I try to live my life the same no matter whether I'm getting ready for a fight or not. I feel like I'm always getting ready for a fight
They
because
could call tomorrow,
uh,
man.
yeah, 100%. No, that's what my last fight was on 4 days notice. And I just fortunate that I was able to step up and take the opportunity because I try my best to stay ready all the time.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, regular day, I wake up usually 6:30 a.m. I'll I started taking some Portuguese classes. I've been loving that. I feel
Nice.
like I always want to try to be challenging myself, learning something, and honestly, learning this something as fundamental as a language has
Hmm.
been amazing because I feel like it's such a, like I said, kind of just a fundamental thing to learn. It's like we go back to like kindergarten. Like that's when we started learning, ABCs and stuff. It's like I'm going back, I'm relearning how to learn, and then I can apply that to everything else I do in my life. Is just being a better student of life. So anyways, I wake up, have Portuguese class, then I make breakfast, head to the gym. I have training at 10 a.m. I'm usually there by about 9, slowly get warmed up, massage going out, get loosened up, do a dynamic warm up, stretch, and get the body moving. Train from 10 to 11:15, 11:30, and then usually, stretch, cool down for about 30 minutes, and get out of there, go home, have lunch, usually take a quick 20-minute nap, rest and recover. And then I head back to the gym. Same thing. I usually train at about 5, get there about 4, 4:30, stretch, warm up, train for an hour, hour and a half, and then cool down for 30 minutes, whatever, and then head home, eat dinner, and call it a night. Usually watch some tape, watch some fights whenever I'm eating dinner, something like that. But just chill. Usually just eat, train, uh,
Repeat.
sleep, repeat. Yeah, that's about it.
Who's like guiding you on your nutrition and supplements?
I mean, nobody in particular right now. I feel like, I'm very, very fortunate. I've been blessed with, I say this all the time, man. I really believe it, dude. It just, God has blessed me with so much. And, the people that he's put in my life, man, are just by far my greatest blessing. I've just been so fortunate to, as I'm coming up, been able to be around so many high level individuals, and just I've always just tried to seek out the best coaching I can, in every area. So I would seek out nutritionists to, uh, a lot of times I ended up like taking them out to lunch, like, hey, do you mind if I come pick your brain? I just want to learn as
Sure.
much as I can. So I'd ask them about stuff I should be doing, what I'm doing now, what I need to change, how does this affect this, whatever. So, anyways, I usually, right now, I'm just kind of doing my own thing. But we have every tool that we could use, every tool that we could ask for, at the UFC PI. So they have nutritionists,
Hmm.
dietitians, and they got uh, man, what was the strength and conditioning coaches? I was trying to think of the if there was a
Yo,
official
definitely.
word for it. I couldn't figure it out. But anyways, we got all of those resources available to us. So I always pick their brains, ask what's going on. So I might start working with my boy Jay Obregon. He's a nutritionist that works with a lot of fighters that I know. I might let him take over my nutrition for any coming up fight that I have. So I think I
Mhm.
might try this time to work with like an actual nutritionist. Usually I just kind of get advice from people, but I think I might let somebody like plan out my meals. Tell me
Sure.
exactly what I should or shouldn't be eating. So um, try that out this time.
What are some things you're working on in your fighting technique and style right now?
It's kind of hard to pinpoint, just because with being a mixed martial artist, MMA fighter, we have to do everything. So it's kind of
Hmm.
all encompassing. Every day, during the week we got, striking classes, we got wrestling classes, we got jujitsu, we got cage work. Some people you might be doing judo, you might be doing whatever. And then we got to tie it all together. We have our MMA classes, everything. So for me specifically right now, I would say I'm just trying to work on all the details that I can find in every single little position for all of them because I have to be
Hmm.
improving my striking, I have to be improving my wrestling, I have to be improving my jiu-jitsu, have to be improving my MMA, my cage work. I'd say those are the five key areas. It's like striking, all encompassing because it's funny because that's kind of a blanket
That's kicking and
or
punching.
umbrella. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of an umbrella term, striking. I mean, that's boxing, kickboxing, karate, taekwondo, whatever, anything striking, Muay Thai, any of it. So striking is just kind of all encompassing, wrapping all those things together. And then same thing grappling wise. Grappling is just any form of hand to hand, not combat, hand to hand grappling.
Yeah,
So
like
like
grabbing each other.
wrestling, yeah, sorry, wrestling, jujitsu, judo, sambo, any of these things. But I would just summarize it all. The separate parts. I'd be like probably striking, wrestling and jujitsu are probably like the two biggest ones for grappling, and then your cage work, like up against the wall,
Hmm.
whenever you're getting pinned up against a cage in a
Sure.
fight, and then mixing them all together, combining them all for MMA. So that's like the five areas. But for me right now, I'm just trying to um, each class focus on every detail I can. It's not really necessarily that right now I'm doing more striking than anything. It's a kind of try to stay doing all of it. Just fine tuning every single class.
Very cool. You've talked a lot about the mind and the mindset going into a fight. Never been in a fight, so I can't put myself in that situation, but I can imagine it's freaking crazy. Talk to me through your ideal mindset going into a match, going into a fight. What are you thinking? What are you doing backstage? How are you prepping? You listening to music? You got some mantras you might say. Like, what's your kind of mindset going into the ring or going into the
Mm.
cage?
Man, now, I feel like it's changed always. I mean, as it should, in my opinion. Just like your fighting style, your technique, and everything. Your mindset is no different. It's constantly getting refined, constantly improving. So it's probably different every fight. But for right now, the current mindset that I'm in, that seems to bring me the best performance that I can, is really, truthfully, just letting go of everything.
Hmm.
I think you have to. I actually just recently uh, got brought to my attention this what they call a performance paradox, and it's basically about letting go of the end result, and this might be again another one of those cliches, but
No, I
I guess
like
to
it. Yeah.
summarize it, it would be like, focusing on the product. I'm sorry, focusing on the process and not the outcome. So it's like, dude, be relentlessly focused and ruthless with your planning and your strategy when it comes to training, diet, everything. Be meticulous with everything you can, but when it comes time to actually compete, all of their training is done, everything is done. Now, all you have to do is let go and let whatever happens happen,
Mhm.
because you a lot of times you get in your way with trying to control the situation, like during the fight. Like, okay, I need to be here, I need to make sure this happens, I'm focusing on this. To me, that performance paradox is kind of just like basically consciously trying to let go of everything and actually not think about anything and just perform. But it's funny. in the book Relentlessness, Tim Grover, he talks about kind of the same thing. He's like thinking about nothing on the court or on the field or in the cage is so much harder than people think
Hmm.
because there's so much external pressure and you have your mind is racing. You have so many thoughts. Oh, I should be doing this. I should be doing this. But having the strength in your mind to be able to just have everything quiet and just be like, shh, shut up. I'm
It's
not
the
listening
best.
to
Yeah.
anything. I don't care about nothing. And again, another cliche, but like just really just emptying yourself, dude. Just like no feelings, no nerves, no nothing. The only thing that matters is getting the job done. And that's right now
When
is
do you
just the
think that
mindset.
gets into your mind? Is it day before the match? I mean, it could be all the time, but like, say you have a fight on Saturday. Like, are you like, when do people like kind of recognize, oh shit, Evan's in the zone right now?
I'll be honest with you. I feel like, and I think a lot of people might go wrong with this, is they think that like, okay, it's fight day. I got to get in the zone. It's like, bro, that's just another skill. That's another skill. You don't just you better have been practicing that every single day leading up into this fight for, I mean, years probably. Um, to be, you're not just going to be able to, it's like showing up for a math test, day of the math test and be like, all right, time to do
You
this
gotta
shit. And
cram.
it's like, well, is that, bro, did you practice? Like, did you practice every single, you should have been studying every single day, right? You're not going to show up and do calculus without studying calculus every single day for forever. And so to me, the mindset is the same way. It's way worse because, dude, if you are sadly mistaken, and I have to tell amateurs this. I used to coach a lot. I'm not doing so much at the moment, but I used to coach a lot of fighters and a lot of amateurs and stuff. And people would always think for some reason it's our ego. Of course it is, but it's our ego trying to deceive us and think we're trying to put off the real work because that mental work is some of the hardest stuff.
Hmm.
Being able to be present, deal with those nerves, and because to deal with them, you have to accept them. You have to accept, man, I'm nervous as fuck right now.
Hmm.
What is that? Like, what's going on? Most of the time, we'll just be like, no, that ain't real. I ain't nervous. I ain't never scared. I ain't never worried about nothing,
Yeah.
bro. I don't get tired. I'm tough. And it's like, bro, all of that stuff, like, throw all that out the window. You get tired. You get nervous. You get hurt. You're afraid. All of this stuff. Now, figure it out. Why do you feel that way? And then figure out how to overcome it. And then not only just overcome it, but to use it as a superpower. And, but again, dude, that takes a lot of time and effort. I mean, an insane amount of time and effort. And but a lot of people, like I was saying, is a lot of especially the amateurs, and I'm sure I was guilty of the same thing because you don't know what you don't know. But you think, man, when that cage door closes, man, I'm gonna be a savage. Like
Yeah,
nothing's gonna
totally.
stop me. And it's like, bro, if you get tired, if you get hurt, if you get beat up in the gym, it's 10 times worse, 10 times faster in a fight. So if you can't ruthlessly control your mind in the gym, it's gonna fall apart in the fight. So it's like I tell them all the time, like, bro, you guys gotta practice that stuff here. Don't get tired and then sit out around and be like, yeah, but in the fight, I wouldn't do that.
Hmm.
Like, bro, what are you talking about? That is the fight. The fight is practice. You practice, you're gonna fight the same way you practice, just like anything in life. You're gonna perform the same way that you prepare. And actually, you usually perform worse. So you better be over preparing because you're gonna underperform. So yeah, it's funny, man. I think that I love the mind so much, man, because I think it's everything.
Yeah.
Even the physical stuff we're doing. Whenever I'm telling my body, whenever I'm throwing punches, I'm throwing kicks, I'm grappling, whatever, it's my mind communicating to my body what to do. So
Hmm.
it's literally all about just staying in control of your mind, and then also being able to think better. Be a better critical thinker.
Yeah.
Because we're really, dude, we're playing physical chess out there. You're
Yeah,
making
totally.
reads, you're setting up stuff, figuring, you're looking at tells, seeing what does and doesn't work. But it's like, dude, if you're not used to competing at a super high level or computing, if your mind is not used to computing at a million miles an hour, you're not going to just magically start doing it, if you
Yeah,
hadn't
totally.
practiced it. So,
Who are some of the guys that you think have done it the best? Maybe that you look up to in the UFC?
mm, so like a goat list kind of.
It could be, but it could be somebody that maybe, you just had always admired and maybe they didn't win all the titles, but like just somebody you really looked up to.
Man, I really love that you said that because it is, man, as crappy as it is, sometimes some of the best guys, they don't have the best luck in the fights.
Sure.
They don't have I feel like I've seen guys that do everything right and then they just you know, I don't like to say bad luck. I really don't, just because I think that it's everything is within your control. Like, it's all about how well you prepared, how well you are equipped to deal with the situation. But sometimes, dude, you can do everything right and you just get caught, or just
Hmm.
have a bad night or whatever. So
You
yeah, I
get
love that you
injured.
said
Yeah,
that.
totally.
Yeah, whatever, dude. So anyways, I think that GSP, George St. Pierre, has
People
always
say
been one of
he's
my
the
very
GOAT.
favorite.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Dude, I love GSP, man. For me, I love him because I think he was just so far ahead of his time. And in an era where mixed martial arts was so barbaric, it was just about who was the toughest dude. So it was basically just um, single individual martial artist. This guy's a boxer, this guy's a wrestler, this guy does taekwondo, this guy is judo, whatever. They were basically coming in to show, my art is better than your art. And
Hmm.
obviously, at the time GSP was in, it was much more advanced than that. But still, it was still very rudimentary. And most fighters' approach to the game was very rudimentary. George St. Pierre thought about everything, dude. He did. I mean, he figured out, like, hey, this is mixed martial arts. In my
Hmm.
opinion, he was like a Bruce Lee of the time, of like,
Very
yo,
cool.
we got to
Yeah.
do everything all together all the time. And it's not just what you do on the mat or in the cage, it's everything you do outside of it. How are you eating? How are you sleeping? How's your strength and conditioning? How's your everything? And he kind of he to me he's my favorite because he was the most cerebral fighter. He was like the most intelligent with his approach, and I just thought that
Hmm.
was so dope to come into such a savage, barbaric sport and just be like, okay, we got to do that. You got to be an elite level savage,
Yeah,
but you got to be an elite level scholar too. Like, being tough only gets you so far. Everybody's
totally.
tough in this game. It's about who does it, who's the toughest, and does this stuff the smartest. That's what it
Hmm.
really comes down to. Who puts those two together? But so GSP for sure, probably number one for me. One of my favorites. John Jones. Uh, I love Khabib. I think that his dominance,
Yeah.
his ability to just absolutely dominate, his willingness to compete. I mean, that dude just, you could tell that dude had a different level mind.
Hmm.
He was going in and trying to kill you for 15 or 25 minutes straight, didn't slow down. And I know now is because it's how tough his mind was. And
Yeah.
to me, going back to the mindset thing real quick, I actually think one of my I mean, not even one of, it's my absolute biggest component of my mindset now is my faith. And it is just, to me, getting my mind right before a fight is and like I said, this is for everything in life. I think life is a fight for all of us. So this goes for everything. But man, keep a God first, and asking Him for guidance, dude,
Hmm.
and to lay your worries, lay your fears at His feet, and let Him
Sure.
figure them out. And like, truly, man, I know it's probably just another cliche, but like, the deeper you believe that, man, the to me, just the better my life gets.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
um,
It's
so
almost like you
anyways, I
give up
think
control a little bit.
100%. Yeah, exactly like I was talking about with that performance paradox, right? Of like, we want to be so in control of all of it, but
Hmm.
like at a certain point, to me, I think about it like, we're so in control of our training. We control all of the preparation, but we don't control how things work out. We
Hmm.
have to let go of that. And actually, in order to try to get the best outcome we can, we have to let go of it. We can't try to control it.
Sure.
Um, so anyways, the reason I brought that up too is because I think Khabib exhibited that amazing,
Hmm.
like, throughout his career, is just like his faith was, and I really think that's what contributed to him having one of the strongest minds of all
Yeah.
time that we've seen in MMA. So
You
I
think we'll
thought
ever
that was
see Khabib
absolutely
again?
amazing. No, I don't think so. I don't think we should. I think, man, I mean, maybe I'm selfish for thinking this way, but I think, dude, this sport takes a lot out of you, man.
Sure.
It really does. And it's because it's much more than a sport. It's a lifestyle. It really is. Like, you don't, it's just like competing at anything at an elite
Hmm.
level. You give your whole self to it. To be at the elitist level, you give all of yourself to it, and it's unfortunately, it's very taxing on the body, but it's also very taxing on your relationships, like your family.
Hmm.
You're away from everybody. one of my favorite quotes ever is the price of self mastery is solitude. And it's really true, man. You really want to master yourself. You want to be great. You got to spend time by yourself. And, you know, to be great at this, dude, you spend a lot of time by
Hmm.
yourself. You're on the mats training with other people and stuff. But, I mean, it's a
I mean,
solo
in a
sport.
sense, you
It
step
really
into the
is.
cage, it's you against whoever's in front of you. Nobody's gonna help
Yep.
you.
So, yeah, man. The reason I was saying all that is, dude, I like to see. I love that Khabib when I'm on top. I
Hmm.
love that he didn't overstay, you know, because like unfortunately a lot of guys do because the level of competitor that it takes that you have to build and become in order to make it to the top, you never want to stop being that guy. You
Yeah,
never
totally.
you fall in love. You fall in love with the process. You fall in love with trying to be better. So what ends up happening is guys stay way past their prime or whatever, you know, and end up taking a lot of unnecessary losses, a lot of unnecessary damage,
Yeah.
and I feel like it taints their legacy. So, anyways, I love seeing guys get out ahead of it. You know, just like, yo, you've done what you needed to do, bro.
Hmm.
Go, freaking sail off into the
Yeah,
sunset
go
with your
sit on the
family.
beach
Live,
somewhere, man.
bro. Live an amazing life, and just there's so much life outside of fighting. You know,
Hmm.
so. Um, I don't think that you know Khabib's thing was when his father passed away because he was his father was his lifetime coach. Um, he fought Justin Gaethje after his father passed, and he said, but it's because him and his father had talked about him fighting Justin Gaethje, and he was like, "I'm going to do this for my dad," because we had already talked about this. But after that, he said his mother asked him. She was like, "Please,
Dang.
don't do this. Don't do this anymore without your dad." And he was like, "All right," you know.
Yeah.
So, man,
Mother
it makes
says
me
something like
emotional even
that,
thinking
you
about
pay
it.
attention to her.
100%, man. Got to.
With
Mom knows what's best.
for sure. She's seen her boy get beat up way too much, man. With with you and your schedule, how does scheduling work in the UFC? I know it's, not, you know, unless maybe like you get to the, you know, Conor McGregor stage, you can kind of like pick and choose when you fight, maybe. But like, when do you expect to fight next? And do you have any idea of who it might be and when it might be?
No, unfortunately, the scheduling is a little bit chaotic
Hmm.
from the way it seems for me. Uh, but yeah, I have a manager, as do pretty much all of us. We have a manager that they are in direct contact with the UFC. So instead of the UFC reaching out to each individual fighter, they usually reach out to a management company or manager and is like, "Hey, we need to fight, you know, at this weight or whatever. Who do you have at this weight?" So then the UFC talks to one guy, and that one guy usually has a plethora of guys that he manages. So then that's whenever your manager usually comes to you and it's like, hey, are you good to fight on this date? Do you want to take this? Whatever. So the scheduling can be kind of all over the place, a little bit sporadic and everything, but um, it is what it is. It's like I was saying earlier, man. I'm trying to right now, just trying to try my best to stay ready and be able to be ready to take any opportunity that comes my way. So, got to get my weight down, stay within. That's the hardest thing. I'm ready to fight all the time, but making weight, man, the weight cutting part of the sport is brutal. So,
So
it's
you're
really
a
hard to
welterweight,
walk
right?
around. So two of my fights in the UFC have been at welterweight, but I'm actually a lightweight.
Okay.
So
So what
I
do you walk
usually fight
around
at
at?
155. I walk around about 185. I'm about
Damn, dude.
182 right now. So, making 155 on short notice is almost impossible. Uh, Other than absolutely killing yourself, which is not ideal because it takes
Yeah.
away from your performance big time. Um, but I can take fights at 170 short notice, but unfortunately, it's usually I'm filling in for somebody that fell out, and the guys at 170 do the same thing I do to cut to 155.
Hmm.
So it's like I'm fighting a dude that's way bigger. But to me now, that doesn't matter as much. As I get better, I realize obviously I've known this all along, but I understand it more deeply now that, dude, size truly doesn't matter in a fight unless that size knows what it's doing.
Hmm.
So
That's a
I
good
wouldn't,
point.
I don't get as worried. I don't get worried about fighting. Like I could fight, in my opinion, somebody that's absolutely massive. It doesn't matter how big you are. If you don't know what you're doing, like you don't know how to fight. Like it doesn't matter. And it'd be like, it's kind of like, I'm not going to be afraid of you. I don't care if you're the biggest dude in the world and we're playing chess. I'm not going to be afraid of you to play chess with you
Hmm.
because like you don't understand the rules of the game. It's about how good you are at this game. And fighting is no different, dude. There's like deep levels of understanding to be had for everything. And if you don't understand those things, you're not going to usually match up very well with somebody that does. And
Yeah, totally.
anyways, with that being said, at the right matchups, I wouldn't mind taking fights at 170 because I wouldn't have to kill myself to make weight, and I could do that at short notice. But it will be tougher and tougher because, like I said, when that matters is when that size knows what it's doing
Mm,
because
yeah,
it itself
totally.
is still a skill. It's still, size and athleticism, strength and power. All these things are still a skill to be accounted for.
Hmm.
But it doesn't matter unless you know what you're doing with it.
Yep, totally. Well, Evan, man, it's been such a joy having you on. You're an incredible dude. I love all the mindset talk and just like honestly your passion for life in a sense. Obviously it's part of, fighting, but just being a good human being for the most part, man. It's been great getting to hear your story and learn a lot more about you. And gosh, I hope they give you a fight here soon, man, because you're gonna get some more fans.
Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate it, man. I hope that hopefully they give me a fight too. But dude, thank you so much, man. It's been great getting to talk with you, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the future. We'll stay in touch, and glad our
Definitely.
boy JP put us in touch. Shout out JP, my boy.
That's right.
But anyways, man, thank you so much, bro. And it really means a lot to me what you just said because I really do believe my purpose is just to positively impact the world and other people's lives as much as possible. So
Yeah,
I love fighting, but it's not my purpose. I think it's my vehicle to reach my maximum human potential, and
love it.
reaching my maximum human potential is what's actually going to fulfill my purpose. So in a way, it is my purpose, but it's not the direct thing. It's being the best person I can be is what's far more important. So I really
Amazing.
appreciate that.
Well, Evan, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Sam. Great to see you, buddy.